Chucky wanna play?
Look at me, Damien. It's all for you.
I am the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's work.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
They're here.
Welcome everyone to the next episode of the Gruesome Task podcast. My name is Deonte, and I'm here with my host, Jose. Go ahead and say hello.
Hey guys, it's a new week. Let's get this one started. I'm really excited.
Yes, we got a fun one for you today. We are doing the movie Ma, which released last year in 2019. Psychological horror / thriller film. It was a very fun watch, and we hope you all enjoy the episode. Before we get into it, we want to go ahead and talk about our socials, where you can find us. We are on Instagram at Gruesome Task Podcast, on Twitter at The Gruesome Task. You can find myself on Twitter at _under_the_knife and on Instagram at xdeontems. What about you?
You can find me on Instagram at j.a.gallegos, and then you can find me on Twitter at thatguyjose. I'm open to all follows and any conversations.
Yes, hit us up on there. Talk movies with us. Talk ideas, suggestions for the podcast, anything like that. Also, don't forget that we do also have the discount code for Horror Pack. You can go to Horror Pack and subscribe to their DVD or Blu-ray deals and use code ITSFOLLOWS to save yourself $3 on your monthly Horror Pack.
Yeah, Horror Pack is definitely something I recommend. As I have before, it's something I get monthly, and it's really exciting. Looking forward to those random horror movies you receive every month and just kind of getting that little fix in.
Yep. So check that out. Good stuff there. And before we jump into a little bit of details about the film, did you have anything else you wanted to mention, my good sir?
No, I'm ready to get into the film if you are.
All right, perfect. Well, as we mentioned earlier, Ma, released in 2019. Great film. Ended up being released on Blu-ray and DVD in September. For those who have not watched the film, it's not available on any streaming platforms currently. You can rent it from Amazon Prime or Vudu. You can also purchase it digitally from those retailers, or you can pick up a Blu-ray copy for about $13.08 shipped, or $9.87 for the DVD.
Yeah, so we got Ma, as previously stated, came out in 2019 on May 31st. The average runtime for the movie is 1 hour and 39 minutes. It was written by Scotty Landis and directed by Tate Taylor. The producers were Jason Blum, John Norris, Tate Taylor, and the company was through Blumhouse Productions, which is actually owned by Jason Blum. Our cast here, we got Sue Ann, or Ma, played by Octavia Spencer. Maggie was played by Diana Silvers. Erica played by Juliette Lewis. Haley played by McKaylee Miller. Andy is played by Corey Fogelmanis. Chaz is played by Gianni Paolo. Daryl is played by Dante Brown. Jeannie is Tanyelle Waves. Ben is Luke Evans, and Mercedes is Missy Pyle. Another cool thing that I found here was the director, Tate Taylor, actually played Officer Granger in the movie, which I thought was pretty interesting. Our budget for the film came in at $5 million, and the gross worldwide was $61,105,672. Sorry. And then I wanted to point out the awards here. It actually won a Reframe Stamp Award for Top 100 Grossing Narrative and Animated Features of 2019. So because it made so much money, it actually won an award for that. And then it was nominated for a Campy Film of the Year by the Gallica Society of LGBTQ Entertainment Critics. And then Octavia Spencer was nominated for Best Actress through the Academy of Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror.
Very, very accomplished movie, even though it feels like you don't hear too many people talk about it, unfortunately, even though it's only a year old. But it did very well, so I'm happy for all the actors and the producers and everybody involved.
Yeah, same here. It's definitely a good experience. And another thing that when I was researching it, when talking about awards and so forth, this had two Oscar-winning actresses, and then one other one was nominated. We got Octavia Spencer, and I don't have her name down here, but she played the vet in this movie. They both won Oscars, and then Juliette Lewis was nominated for one as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. Nice. I think I do have the vet's name. That is Allison Janney.
There you go, Allison Janney.
Nice. We got that there. The only two kind of, I guess, like, not fun facts, but other things that I found interesting is Octavia Spencer. She's well known. When I saw her in the trailer of this movie back when the movie came out, I knew it was going to be good because I'd seen her in a bunch of stuff before. Some of the stuff off the top of my head, and when looking at her page, she was in Blue Streak, which was a Martin Lawrence movie from like 1999, which is awesome. She was in both Bad Santas, and recently she was also in Shape of the Water.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Shape of the Water. The one that she won the Oscar for was actually The Help. And another thing that I found was Tate Taylor, the director, actually directed The Help, so he helped her get that Oscar when that movie came out. I don't even remember when that came out.
Yeah, I was, or The Help was 2011, and it looks like, just like looking at some information with Tate Taylor, he's good friends with Octavia Spencer and Allison Janney, her boss in the movie, and so because of that, he frequently collaborates with them with different roles.
Yeah, I found that as well too, and it kind of leads into a fun fact for after we discussed the movie, but yeah, that relationship was very close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the only other thing that I had with the actors and actresses is Diana Silvers, who plays Maggie in the movie, one of the main protagonists. She's a little bit newer to acting, of course, as she's younger, but she did have, I guess, like a small role in the movie Glass. She plays, I don't remember what she played in there. I think she played like some type of, what was it? Oh, her role was a cheerleading girl in like a scene, which I don't remember, so I'm gonna have to go back and watch that.
I thought she was, yeah, I'm sorry about that. I thought she was like the main, I guess, girl from that. She was in Glass, and then that other one where the guy is like a monster. You know what I'm talking about? Like the Beast guy.
You're talking about Split?
Split. Yeah, she's the main girl from that one, and then she kind of goes over into Glass.
Nah, man, she wasn't in Split, bro.
Are you serious? I thought it was.
Nah, the main girl from Split, her name is Anya Taylor-Joy, and she played Casey. She was the main girl.
Oof, my movie knowledge just got questioned. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. I knew she wasn't from Split, but I didn't know what the other girl's name was. I got the good old goggle machine here, you know what I'm saying? So helping out. But the last thing I had was with Juliette Lewis. She's a music artist, and she was in like this, she was in some like indie rock band in the early 2000s, and then went, I guess, like solo afterwards. And she used to be married to Steve Barra, who was a professional skateboarder.
Really?
Yeah.
She's pretty successful.
Yeah, and Juliette Lewis, she's of course is Maggie's mom in the movie, for those listening.
Yeah, she's a pretty good actress. I've seen her in other stuff, but I can't remember what.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what else she's in. But yeah, it's not. When I saw her name, I was like, oh, I know who that is. Yet I couldn't even think of any movies. But that's all that I had when it came to kind of like fun facts about the actors and actresses.
Yeah, I mean, most of them are just mainly full of kids. They're all pretty young and at the peak or the start of their careers, and then you have the older cast who's already older, maybe towards the end of their careers.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's go ahead and hop in. We have Ma. So if you want to get us started.
Yeah, of course. So we got our opening sequence, and you get that kind of classic scene where you get the family moving into a new house. They got a U-Haul attached to their little, I guess, newer version of the Volkswagen, the big wagon that families usually go in. And they're moving in. They're going into their new home, and you see outside there's a rental sign, so you can assume that they're renting it. You got the mom, the daughter, and the dog in the car. So we got our daughter, who is actually Maggie. The mom is Erica, and of course the dog is just a dog. Do you remember the name of the dog?
The name of the dog was Louie.
Louie. There you go. So yeah, they move in, and then you kind of get a feel for who they are. You get a scene where the mom and the daughter are talking about how Maggie is nervous for her first day of school. She's gonna start at a brand new school, and usually you kind of get those scenes where the child is upset for moving. This is completely different. It was a refreshing take for me because she was excited to go to this new school and excited to go to a new place, and later we figure out why they had to move, but I am pretty sure that reason is why she's excited for a new step in life.
Yeah, and she goes to the school, and just like with anyone, when you go to a new place, you're kind of lost. You're not familiar with the way that things are. It's so crazy that like early on, she's there and she's eating or actually I apologize, the first thing is she spots a girl that's there in her wheelchair, as Maggie's not sure where her class is. She's kind of looking around for it, and the girl with the wheelchair, her like motorized kind of wheelchair, it ran out of juice, as she says. So Maggie decides to help her, and she finds out her name is Jeannie, and she says, "Oh, I just need a little push," and she helps her on her way there. And Jeannie, later on, we find out, because at first I thought that she was just a smaller part in the movie, like wasn't really important, but she definitely plays a huge role later on.
Yeah, definitely. I assumed the same thing. I thought it was just to kind of show Maggie's true character a little bit, how nice she can be, seeing this, little girl in a wheelchair not able to go up the ramp because her chair is out of battery. But yeah, it was just one of those classic things where she's new and running late to class, and she sees her and she helps out. And then it cuts over to Erica, the mom, who's starting a new waitress job at the casino. I guess it's a local casino. I believe this movie takes place in Ohio, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I remember the license plate say Ohio. So yeah, there's a casino in Ohio, and she starts there, and she's nervous, and it cuts kind of scene to scene, seeing how nervous both the daughter is, and then it cuts to the mom, seeing how nervous she is for her job. And then it goes to Maggie eating alone in the library.
Yeah, so she's eating alone, and she ends up getting approached by Haley, who is as a lot of movies do, she's your typical like preppy, quote unquote popular girl and she talks like it too. She mentions that she realizes that she could tell that Maggie is new, and right off the bat she invites her to a party, and Maggie says like, "Well, I can't because I'm supposed to do some stuff with my mom." And Haley goes, "Okay, that's fine. If you can spend your night hanging around with old people." And it's just like immediately right off the bat I was like, "Oh, I hate Haley so much." So much.
Why do you say that?
Because it's I mean, I'm not saying that occurred like at our high school necessarily, but it's like the way that movies portray these quote, like I always say quote unquote because like they're popular, but most of the time they're losers. So it's like the way that they portray these popular or like supposed to be really pretty girls or handsome dudes and stuff, like all of them are very like douchey and kind of jerks. And I know that does occur in real life at schools. It's not just movies, and so it very much is a real thing. And I don't particularly, I guess like those people, because a lot of times like how she kind of is there, she's very mean and rude to Maggie when Maggie's nice and she's the new girl. So it's like, why are you gonna treat her like that? So yeah, that's kind of my thing, my little mini rant.
Yeah, I totally get that. I think the little saving grace, yeah, she commented on, "Oh, you can go with old people," but like she wasn't the typical popular, I guess, girl that you see in normal movies where she's like pressuring Maggie. She just kind of accepts it, like, oh, you could do that, or you can come with us, like whatever you want to do. So I thought that was something different and something newer you see in, or not used to seeing in these horror movies, because usually like this, the main girl like Maggie would get bullied and stuff and kind of peer pressured into partying and doing drugs.
Oh, well, she gets peer pressured almost in the next scene.
Oh, she does, yeah.
Yeah,
But,
because
like,
she
at that point.
Oh, at that point, yeah. See, it's one of those you thought, but you thought wrong. You know what I'm saying? Because what happens is like Maggie gets home. Her mom says, "I got to pick up this shift at work. No one else can do it." So Maggie does decide to go, quote unquote, party with these other kids when their party was just about 6 of them, and they were gonna all be in this van and they were gonna go drink. That's basically what their party was. And she does get like peer pressured because when she gets in the van, Haley offers her vape, which is so like modern. Back then it would be cigarettes, now it's vape machines. She offers her the little vape gimmick, and Maggie says, "Well, no, I don't vape." And Haley, being like, I don't want to say like dumb blonde, but like being the typical role in the movie, says, "You do know that you can smoke as much as you want until you're 25 and nothing bad will happen to you." I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I hadn't seen this movie before, so it completely cuts to that, and then that whole perception of Haley just kind of gets erased, and she becomes this dumb idiot high schooler who doesn't think anything can happen to her until she gets older. But yeah, they're pre-pressuring her, and they're in front of a liquor store, and they don't have any liquor, and they're trying to get some, so they send each, I guess, friend one by one to stand outside the store and ask adults going in to buy them alcohol, you know. And yeah, that's not, I had a problem with this because, first of all, they're parked right in front of the store in a security van, which is very noticeable. And then they stand also right in front of the liquor store, the doors, like they literally could open the door for whoever's walking in. And that's not smart, guys. Like it rubbed me the wrong way that little detail wasn't really fixed throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I do see that, but I guess I just think of it from, I know like my grandfather has told me stories about how back when he was younger, I mean, this is going into like, let's see, like late 60s, and I guess late 60s, you know, him and his friends would do essentially the same thing. Like they would go be at like a liquor store, a corner store, and then get someone to buy them, you know, malt liquor. And they didn't necessarily have this like plan where they were like standing super far away and stuff. I think it just kind of goes in that playing. I guess like, I don't want to say this is exactly from my grandpa, but it goes into that kind of thing of when like these kids are like dumb high schoolers, you know, like they don't, obviously the girl making the vape comment, like they're not that bright yet. So it just makes sense in my mind for them to just be like, yeah, we're going to stand right in front of the door where the shop owner can see us handing this money to someone, you know?
Yeah, and it also just like, it goes back to them in the van, and Haley, she's up next, and she's like, no, I'll pass because the owner of the store knows my dad. Like she knows has a chance of getting caught, and I'm pretty sure everybody else does as well. And then they also comment because they end up peer pressuring Maggie to do it because it's her first time, and they want to see if she's a narc, or I think that's what Chaz says. He calls her a narc, and then she ends up going, being peer pressured, and she stands out there, and she sees Ma coming down, walking her dog, and they're looking at Maggie. The kids in the car are looking at Maggie, like, oh, this one, she's gonna do it. So Maggie asks Sue Ann, which is Ma, if she can buy alcohol, and at first she's very hesitant. She's like, no, I could get in a lot of trouble. I can't do this for you. And then she walks closer towards the van, and Andy, who is one of the boys in the group, gets out of the car, and he confronts Sue-Ann says, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're sorry, we'll get out of here." But then Sue-Ann sees the name of the van, which was Hawkins Security, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Hawkins Security, and immediately she changes. She's like, "Oh, I'll help you guys, but like, I don't want you drinking and driving, so we just gotta be careful."
Yeah, she looks like she's playing that motherly type of role by, yes, she shouldn't be buying them like booze, but her saying like, I don't want you all drinking and driving, like you promised me, and like all this kind of stuff. And when she gives them the alcohol, she says the whole thing of like, never speak a word of this, and they're like, oh, like thank you, and she goes like, thank you for what, and winks at them like she's, she's trying to be that kind of cool mom, and that's how she comes off to the kids. And all the kids end up going to, because I think that they tell her that they were going to that riverbank, or did she recommend that they go to that riverbank so that way they wouldn't like drink and drive? Do you remember?
Yeah, they told her that they were gonna go. I think they called it the Rock Pile. And then that's where she's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. I used to go there when I was in high school." And then she kind of like reminisces on that. But you kind of get that look on her face, like, "Oh, maybe she's lying," because I mean, Octavia Spencer is a great actress, so she has that like hidden personality as to whom this Sue-Ann really is. And you kind of get that hint that she's kind of lying, that she had never really been to that rock pile.
Yeah, and right after that, when the kids peel off, she's back at the vet where she works, and she's on her phone, and she's immediately looking up the kids on Facebook. By she ended up like finding information. She looks up Andy and finds his Facebook page, and like with most kids, they have pictures with them with their friends on Facebook. And while I know that this was like, part of the film to help progress the story, I feel like it's also just very telling of whenever it's kind of a wake up call in a way for a lot of people to realize that as you're putting these things on social media and you're tagging other people and you're putting these pictures up there, that like anybody could see that. If you don't have your profile private, and even to an extent, even if you do have your profile private, I mean, it's just super simple for someone to find a lot of information about you going online. And, her being, a mother twice the age of these kids, knew that and starts doing her research, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And she associates the Hawkins Security, ends up finding the phone number for the business, and she ends up calling the business. And we cut to Ben and Mercedes in their car doing naughty things, and she interrupts them with the phone call. Ben answers the phone call, and she's telling him, "Oh, you need to be worried about one of your workers." And he's like, "Well, what worker?" And she tells him, "Well, Andy," which ends up being Ben's son. And he's just loaning his son one of his work vehicles.
Yeah, she tells him, a little birdie told me that they're gonna be down at the, what would you call it? I keep wanting to call it a riverbank.
The rock pile.
The rock pile. There we go. Yeah, so that they're gonna be down at the rock pile, and he's like, and I think that's when he mentions like, who told you this? And she's like, a little birdie. And so he hangs up and ends up calling the police on his son, so that way, I'm sure he didn't really want him to get arrested. It was more so just to like scare him, like a lot of parents do for teenagers. But yeah, the cops show up at the rock pile, and all the girls all the guys and are like trying to hide, and they tell Maggie, because she's never been in trouble before, from what it seems like, because she's like, do I run? Do I hide? Like, she doesn't know what to do. And Haley's telling her, no, just stand out here. He won't do anything to you because you're a girl.
Yeah, and which kind of tells you what kind of, I guess, cops are going around this town. But yeah, he shows up and he starts interrogating, and he pulls Andy up and starts patting him down. And he tells him that your dad wanted me to arrest you. And then he starts going, well, I went to high school with your dad, which is a recurring theme throughout this movie. It's a small town, so everybody knows each other. They all went to school together. And then he ends up telling Andy, well, your dad's a jerk. Well, he actually says the D word, but your dad's a jerk. And he lets him go. He gives him 10 minutes to pack everything up, and the kids go free. And Maggie ends up going home. She smells like drugs. She's had alcohol in her system. The mom is worried. Maggie starts, typical child, starts talking back and giving her mom, crap about her own life as well. And the mom's like, well, I don't want you making bad decisions. And Maggie comes back and says, well, what about all your past decisions? And that's when it kind of like puts Erica, the mom, into place. And that's when the conversation ends.
Yeah, and that's a typical kind of scene I feel like a lot of people could relate to, being in high school. Obviously, as teenagers, most of us think we know everything, and we have all this like anger and all this kind of rebellious kind of stuff built up. And that even though Maggie's still this, like, at heart she's a really good child and she wants to do the right thing, when she is confronted, she definitely will kind of like fight back with their mom and stuff. But the next scene that we get is where Maggie's mom, Erica, goes to drop off the dog at the vet, and she drops and obviously Ma, who is Octavia, she is working there at the vet. So this is the first interaction that we get with Erica and Ma.
Yeah, and she's dropping off Louis the dog for just a checkup, and Sue Ann is actually who's Ma. She kind of has this realization. She recognizes Erica, but Erica's just going in such a hurry that she doesn't stop to look at who Sue Ann is. So you get more of that feeling that, oh, Sue Ann knows Erica somehow, but that it wasn't reciprocated. So then you get Sue Ann looking out the window, and she starts like getting teary-eyed and kind of reminiscing about her past, which goes into the next scene, where the kids meet up again with Sue Ann in the parking lot of her vet job. And she tells them, we can't do it here. I'm going to get in trouble with my job. So then she lures them down the street, down the road to her house. And that's where she tells them, oh, you could come and drink in my basement. I would rather prefer that. That's where that mom kind of role comes in. She's like, I prefer you guys do it here other than anywhere else. I don't want you driving drunk. You can just party here. It'll be okay. And she gets some snacks and everything. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. She just invites them into their home, and she kind of lures them in.
Yeah, and she tells them, like, hey, you guys can hang out down here. I just got 3 rules. I don't want you to use God's name in vain. I think she says either spit or spill anything on my floors. And most importantly, do not go upstairs. And it's kind of funny because the black kid that's there with them, Darrell, he was like, do you got any pizza rolls or something? And in my head, I'm just like, oh man, these teenagers like just don't get it. Like, you're already not supposed to have these booze, and she bought you these booze. Now she's giving you a place to drink, like, without having to worry about cops or parents and all this other stuff. And now you're asking for more. Like, how much do you need, my man? Come on. So he asked her for like pizza rolls, and then as she's like going up the stairs, he says like, well, what's your name? And she's like, my name's Sue Ellen, and or Sue Ann, Sue Ann. And he says her name, but he says like, he's like, all right, Ma. And then she's like, oh, Ma. And she's like, well, what's your name? And again, this is where names are very, very important in the film. We get the first kind of gist of like the names being, I guess, kind of called out and have an emphasis on them. Is he says, well, my name's Darrell, this is Chaz, this is Haley, this is Andy, and this is Maggie. And so he says all of their names, and it kind of cuts back to Ma. She's like, okay. And she's like, I'll go get the snacks. But when she goes up the stairs, she is cooking them pizza rolls. But she immediately goes on Instagram and starts looking up Andy, and finds like the picture of Andy and Maggie together, and like starts clicking through the profiles and finding all the kids.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy. I mean, she already knew their names because she had looked them up on Facebook from her being at her job earlier, and now she's looking them up again. And then she brings down the pizza rolls, and she's getting ice cups filled with ice. And then Chaz, was it? He starts like speaking up. Oh, this place has potential. It could be really something. He starts giving her all these different ideas about different lights, about beer pong tables, about different things like that. Typical high school. Oh, let's make it a party room. And he starts getting in her face, and he's like, if you don't want to be cool, that's on you. And at this point, he's like right in her face, and she comes around and she gets upset, and she goes back and she pulls out a gun and she points it right at him and tells him to start undressing.
Yeah, which was a completely unexpected scene. I did not. This was my first time watching the movie as well. I had missed it in theaters, and I never expected that to happen at all. She pulls out that gun, and she tells him undress, and so he's kind of looking, and she's like undress, and so he starts to take off his shirt, and then she like points the gun down below, basically saying like take off everything. So he's basically there like butt naked, and then the camera goes on her, and then she just busts out laughing, and she's like, you're a pretty boy, huh?" or something. She says like that, and then like Haley starts to laugh, and the other kids kind of laugh, but Maggie's still very suspicious and kind of cautious, and is like, "That I don't think this is like going well," and she's like, "Put back on your clothes," or whatever, and she's like, "This ain't even real. I just found this when I was moving stuff," and all that kind of, or she says it doesn't work. Sorry, it is a real gun. She said like it doesn't even work, and it was just like such a odd scene. But later on in the film, you realize why she pulled the gun on him, and if we remember, I'll try and remember to reference back to this when it gets to that point.
Yeah, this I gotta say, this scene really made me uncomfortable. And I guess it just feeds more into the character that Sue-Ann is, and it's a crazy person. Like, she's inviting these kids to her basement, and she's telling this 16-year-old to dress completely. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable there, and that, which is good, because you're supposed to kind of get that uncomfortable feeling when it comes to Sue-Ann. But yeah, he puts on his clothes, and then they're partying. We get a whole party sequence of them drinking, and towards the end of it, we see Darrell, who's really drunk, being carried towards out the basement, and this is where Maggie kind of spots a wedding ring on Sue-Ann's on her finger. Sorry. And they have that conversation. Sue-Ann says that she used to be married. She's not married anymore. And then it cuts to young Sue-Ann. We don't really get, the name drop of her being Sue-Ann, but you can tell that it's just a younger version. And she's being invited to the rock piles by the popular kid. She's at the lunch table, and she's this nervous, really shy kid, and she's unsure of whether she wants to go, and she has a friend across from her, and she's like, it could be fun. And that's when it comes back with Sue-Ann at the casino, right?
Yeah, she's at the casino, and she's like sitting at one of the casino tables, or not casino tables, one of the machines, and she's like not playing it, just being nosy. And Maggie's mom, Erica, works at that casino, and she's in her outfit, and she's got her drinks, and she's walking to a table where there's who we get introduced as Mercedes and Ben, which Ben is Andy's father, and Mercedes is, well, we were introduced to them earlier, but we get a little bit more like details of really who they are. Ben is Andy's father, and Mercedes is Ben's girlfriend, and Mercedes is clearly completely wasted. She's like spots Erica and says like, is that, all right, is that you, Erica Thompson? Erica Thompson from high school? And she's like saying it extremely loud so everyone could hear. Clearly, Ma already knows who these people are, but I guess just kind of hearing their names or, kind of reassure her of like, okay, these are the people who I said they are. And I'm sure it helps bring back like memories and all that kind of stuff. And Erica's so drunk, and then Ben's like, "Oh, Erica, it's really nice to see you and stuff." And Ben's like the one that's not drunk and like calm and stuff. And Mercedes is so wasted that another guy that's there, I don't know if he's like a manager at the casino or some type of bouncer, but he's basically like, Mercedes, like, you have to go, like, you need to get out of here now, like, no more drinks. And Mercedes is like causing a scene, and she gets dragged out basically.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty interesting as well. I guess one thing that I'm noticing now when we're discussing this, that those name drops are kind of like further into the movie. You don't understand who these people are until you get these big name drops like the Erica Thompson, and you see Sue Ann looking on the Facebook and seeing who these kids and their names, who they are, which I thought was pretty interesting. We don't see that very often, where you go through and start getting attached to these characters and have no idea who they are. But yeah, after the casino scene, Mercedes is kicked out. You see Sue Ann just sitting there kind of taking all this information in. We find out that Erica, Mercedes, and Ben all went to school together. And this is where we kind of get the backstory of how Erica came to the town. She used to live there. She went to high school there. She left with her husband to California. That marriage didn't work out, and then her and her daughter had to move back. And you get Mercedes like making fun of Erica for kind of failing in life. And now she's working at this casino, which is kind of sad. She even says like, "Oh, that's kind of a sad life," but it was kind of wrong for Mercedes to be talking down on her, even though she was drunk.
Yeah, and you could kind of see as Ben's trying to also get Mercedes out of there that, like, even though Ben was one of these, I guess, popular kids in high school, and so was Mercedes, and I guess all that kind of stuff, is that Ben at least has like some niceness, I guess, if you will, to him, as he's like, he feels uncomfortable with the way Mercedes is talking to Erica, and that's why he's kind of like, all right, come on, let's go, let's get out of here. And the other thing that you kind of realize is that Mercedes is pretty much still, even though they're 20 years out of high school or whatever, she's still acting the same way that she would in high school. She's like being this like loud, like kind of popular, I would say like very cringy type of girl. And it's just interesting that I feel like everyone in the movie at least has like changed since high school, and she's the one that's still the same.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. I think maybe Sue Ann didn't really change much, or didn't let go of her past, but
definitely.
But yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think everyone else just kind of grew up, and Mercedes, she's still rich, she's still popular, she's still beautiful, and she's acting like it. She has all that, and she has no remorse for anybody else's feelings. So after this casino scene, we cut to Erica and Maggie at their home. Erica's leaving for work. She has to go and train out of town, and you get that typical, "Oh, nobody over, I'm being serious," and Maggie's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna have anybody over." So then after that scene, it's a very short scene, you get Sue Ann stalking. She's outside of Mercedes' home. She sees Mercedes walk out of her home, and Mercedes starts going running, and Sue Ann's just kind of watching her from her truck down the street. Another very short scene, but also very crucial. And then you get the kids getting out of school, and going to Andy's, I guess, little security truck, and they see this box that was left under one of the tires, or near one of the tires, and they're cautious at first, but then they open it and they see that it was left by Ma, and they're like all excited. They got this box of alcohol. They're like, "Yeah, we're gonna go party at Ma's," and that's when they go to Ma's.
Yeah, so because what happens is that they get that package, and then Ma sends them a voice or a video message and says like, "Oh, come party! Like it's 5 o'clock somewhere," and they're wondering like, how did Ma get our phone numbers? And one of the boys says, "Oh, it's probably Haley. She always gives it out whenever she's drunk." And Haley says like, "That's the truth." So they don't really kind of continue to question how she got it, which I'm sure she got it from probably their social medias or something like that. But yeah, they decide to go over there to Ma's, and they basically are just, it's like packed with kids. It's not just the kids, like those 6 kids or 5 kids that we know already. It's basically like an actual party. There's like a couch now. It's very it's livened up a little bit. And during this night of them partying and having all this fun, Haley it tells Maggie like, "I really need a pee. I really need a pee." And when they try to go to the bathroom, there's some kids in there doing the naughty naughty, and so Haley's like, "Well, let's find another bathroom." And Maggie's like, "No," because she remembers the rules. Cannot go upstairs. But of course, they go upstairs anyway.
Yeah, so then they go upstairs. Haley has to go to the restroom. Maggie's outside looking, kind of keeping lookout, and she hears these noises from upstairs, and she starts getting scared. She bursts into the restroom. She's like, "Wait, we gotta go, we gotta go." And upon leaving, Ma shows up, and she starts like pushing him against the wall. She's like, "I told you not to come up here," and it was very forceful, very violent, and the girls got scared, and they go downstairs, and everyone's like, "Oh," or they're saying like, "Oh, we gotta leave," and then eventually the party just disperses, and everyone's going home. And I think one thing I did want to point out about this whole kind of scene here is that Sue Ann is really embracing that Ma persona that she was given, and she's wearing different clothes, like more of her party clothes. Throughout this whole movie, she really only wears her vet outfit, her nurse's outfit. She's just typical scrubs with a kind of a cardigan thrown over, and that's pretty much the whole movie. But during these party sequences, she's there to party. She wants to show the kids that she's cool and lively.
Very like interesting that it's kind of like Ma's, I guess, reliving or trying to have this moment of her high school life that she didn't get to have because she wasn't cool or wasn't popular. So she feels kind of like, well, with these kids now, while we know there's a bigger picture involved, she's like, well, I might as well act like it.
Yeah, and yeah, so then it cuts to the next scene. Maggie wakes up in her bed, and she's getting her phone blown up, and it's from Ma, and she's saying, "Sorry, I'm so sorry that I did what I did last night. I shouldn't have done that." And then Maggie's at school, and she's catching up with Haley and telling her like, "Oh, like I got my phone blown up," and Haley's like, "Oh, the same thing happened to me. I just ignored him." And then they're talking, and then this other girl, that one of their classmates, comes up to him, and she's like, "Do you think Ma would let me have my birthday party there?" And Maggie kind of spots this bracelet that she has on, and it's very noticeable. It's meant to be noticeable. You get a shot of that girl's hand, and you see this bracelet kind of dangling from her wrist. And she explains, "Oh, I got it from my boyfriend. It was an anniversary gift." And then Maggie kind of spots Andy standing to the side, and he's like calling her over. And this is the most high school awkward kind of. He's asking her out, and he's like, "Do you want to go out with me?" And he's like, "I would have texted you, but I kind of want to do it kind of the old way, the traditional way." And it's just very, very high school.
Yeah, it's super super high school, but also very 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 cute because like the way that it's presented throughout the movie is that Andy isn't like the other people that they're hanging around with. He isn't necessarily like the super cool or popular one. He doesn't drink. He's always the designated driver. He's the one that's, I guess, the more like respectable one, if you will. And that's probably honestly why like Maggie took a liking to him compared to Chaz, who's supposed to be seen as like the popular pretty boy, and but yet he's like big goofball. So
can we talk about how this kid looks like an ROTC kid that would Naruto run across the halls? I'm serious. That's my only thought throughout this whole movie. That's exactly what he looks like. Like he dresses up every Wednesday with his ROTC uniform and takes things way too seriously.
He kind of does. He kind of does. But I feel like he's so nice that like I didn't think that. I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, his personality and the way his character was written is different, but I'm sure if you stick him in that ROTC uniform, he would fit in perfectly.
I could, man. Now I'm gonna be thinking that no, I need my perception of Andy to be he's a super sweetheart and everything else.
No, man.
Although he pisses me off at the end of the movie, though. But as continuing on with the story, we get this like after they, I guess, after they ask, Andy ends up asking Maggie out. They're like walking downstairs, and Ma's waiting for them at the school, which is creepy. But she's waiting for them at the school. It says like, I have some Bud Light that's on ice. Who's ready to party? And they all start making excuses as like why they can't go. They say like, oh, I got homework. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. And so Ma like looks very like disgruntled. But the next scene is her at another car, and she's basically buying booze for some other kids that are in another car. So we kind of learn that I didn't know what to take it as, like, because we know so many people were coming over to Ma's house. I don't know if it's just that she had all these friends, or like, I guess not friends, but these kids that she was trying to make their friends because she wanted to relive that high school life, or if it was also from the standpoint of, well, her main group of friends being Maggie, Andy, Haley, and the gang, like they couldn't hang out tonight. So I'm just gonna find someone to hang out with, kind of thing, like I need to hang out with some other like kids, or like you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly how I perceived it. She's stuck in high school. Like she wants to party with these kids. She wants the high school parties in her basement, and she's willing to go out of her way to buy these young kids alcohol, and that's exactly what she's doing. But she does that thing where she tries to lead them to her house, and she kind of slows down towards her driveway, and these kids speed up and eventually pass her while throwing I think it was like some sort of drink at her window. And what is they say they call her, do they call her a loser?
Yeah, they said, yeah, they were like, you effing loser. And Ma like breaks down really bad, and she just begins to like cry in her car. And it was a pretty sad scene, because Ma helped these kids out and like got them their alcohol, but yet they're calling her a loser and throwing stuff at her. And it's like, why? Like I don't believe they should have done it, but I guess I understand it from the standpoint of they're high school kids and they're jerks.
Yeah, definitely. It breaks my heart seeing that, 'cause, I mean, she was going out of her way. She just wants to be liked. She wants to be popular as well. And then, these typical high school kids are making fun of her and calling her a loser. But then it cuts to Erica, the mom, coming back, and she's sitting in the bedroom with Maggie, and Maggie's telling her about how she has this new boyfriend. She's excited, and that's pretty much the scene. That's really all they talk about is her new boyfriend. Of course, the mom's being mom, just making sure their daughter's safe. And then it cuts to yet again another party. No, I believe before that, that's the mall scene, correct?
No. The mall scene hasn't hit yet. The mall scene's like a little bit after.
Okay, so then it is the partying?
Yeah, we get the party. It's Stephanie's party, so that means Ma did agree to have Stephanie's party. And Ma was like getting all dolled up and stuff for the party again. And when they get there, Andy and Maggie arrive together, and they arrive a little bit later than everybody else. And as soon as they arrive, Ma goes up and is like, "Oh, I'm glad y'all finally made it." And then, excuse me, and then Andy goes and says like, "I'm gonna go get us some drinks." and Ma says like, "Oh, cute kid," and Maggie, you could tell, is like just fully in love with Andy. Is like, "Yeah, he is." And then Ma says, "Well, you better watch out because men are dogs and they only want one thing. You don't want no baby." And um, Maggie ends up saying like, "Oh, you sound like my mother." And while I thought that was like a typical scene, right? Like kids always tell adults that. It seemed like Ma took offense to it because her face turned from like happy to just this kind of like disgruntled, angry look and stormed off.
Yeah, I think she doesn't accept the fact that she's older. That's kind of how I took it. She doesn't want to, you know, be this mom type. She wants to be a young kid, and just basically like befriending Maggie. And it's like, oh, just be careful, you know, like guys really only want one thing. And then it cuts to Andy coming back, and he's making out with Maggie really hard. And then he mumbles out, "Look, oh, we can go to my van. I got my van." And immediately, Ma cuts in. She's like, "Let's take some shots," because she's watching Maggie and Andy throughout the whole party, and she kind of keeps them there. And she gives Maggie one shot, and then she's like, "Oh, Maggie, take this other one for me. I'm too old. I can't take shots." And so Maggie takes that one, and then party kind of goes on, and eventually Maggie's like going in and out. She's feeling very disoriented, and you see Ma just kind of staring at her with Andy, making sure that things go to plan. And immediately, Maggie blacks out, and it cuts to Maggie waking up in her own bed, not knowing what had happened the night before.
Yeah, she wakes up in that bed. She feels her ears and realizes that her earrings are gone. She gets up and looks in the mirror, and she has some bruising on the bottom of her leg as well. And she, at that point, that's when it cuts to the mall scene. And so she's there at the mall, and she's there with Andy, and she's like, "What happened? Like, I woke up in the bed, like I don't remember getting home, all this stuff." And so Andy's basically saying, like, he kind of jokes with her and says like, "Oh, all this crazy stuff happened." But then he says, "No, I'm just kidding, like none of that happened." And it's also a little, I don't know if Maggie was trying to like buy more earrings or what, but when they cut to that mall scene, they're at one of those like jewelry stores and they're looking at earrings and stuff.
Yeah, maybe she was trying to replace it, because she did mention like, "Oh, I got these from my mom. They're very special." And I think she said like her mom got it from her mom or something like that. So it's like an heirloom, and she was probably just like trying to replace it, trying to find something in the meantime until she could find those. But during that little sequence there, she's talking to Andy, and she's very suspicious of Ma. She's like, "I don't want to go there anymore. I don't want you hanging out there anymore. Like, you're my boyfriend. Just do this for me." And he's like, "Well, okay, I guess I will." And then it cuts to them back at Maggie's house. They're making out on the couch, getting pretty serious. And Erica, the mom, rolls in. You see the headlights go through the window, and then the kids are freaking out, trying to put everything back together and make sure that they don't look like they were fooling around. And the mom walks in, and immediately she knows, like, "Oh, this boy's in my house. I know what's going on." Maggie scurried into the kitchen, pretending to get some drinks, and there's pillows all over the floor, and the mom's picking them up, and she's very suspicious, like, "Oh, you guys are really thirsty, huh? I wonder why." And then it just kind of goes into them having dinner, and she's questioning Andy throughout the dinner, and they're talking about families. Andy reveals that his mom actually passed away from cancer, and that he doesn't really like Mercedes, who is now his, I guess, stepmom. I don't know if Mercedes and Ben ever got married, but I guess that new stepmom role, and he ends up calling her the B word, and that's where the mom had enough, and she cuts off the conversation.
Okay, so yeah, it right when that happens, like the mom ends up going to the kitchen when she's had enough, and Andy's phone is blowing up like crazy, and the mom mentions like, "Oh, Andy, you're very popular, huh? How many girlfriends you have?" And Andy shows Maggie the phone, and it's Ma just like showing all these like party clips and like her with all these beers saying like, "Don't make me drink by myself. Don't make me drink by myself." And we kind of get that sense that like nobody's responding to Ma, And so Ma's like getting very desperate. She's wanting the high schoolers to come back over there, to think she's cool, to that she has a spot to hang out with. And that's why she's, in a way, she's kind of trying to make them feel bad not by not going to spend time with her.
Yeah, exactly. She's blowing up their phones, and it cuts to the next day, and it's Maggie and Haley, and they're discussing the amount that Ma is texting them, and they're annoyed with it. And Haley says, "Oh, I blocked it." Maggie blocked hers, and she had Andy block Ma on his phone. And Haley sends out this video telling everyone to block Ma, that she's really crazy. And then Ma sees that while she's getting her nails done, and then she storms out of there, and it cuts to her at the vet office. She's rewatching it again, and she's even angrier. She doesn't know what to do, how to get these kids on her side again. And then we get another scene of a young Sue-Ann, who is scared to go into this door, and we hear this guy like, "Oh, come in and close the door, it'll be okay." And then it cuts back into the older Sue-Ann, and she's kind of there, paused at the door, not wanting to go in, which kind of tells you like, oh, there's more to this. And these little scenes right here were probably the ones that I needed to have, because this backstory is a really good backstory. So I needed more, but they were giving us little by little, which I thought was good throughout the movie as well.
Yeah, they start piecing out everything, and I think I do like that they did that as well, because you don't just get everything all in one go. It makes you continue to want to watch to figure out what happened. And it's obvious that these flashbacks are kind of causing Ma to go down the path that she is now. And like the very next scene that we get after that flashback is Ma sends all of them a message, and they all get it on their phone. And she says like, "Oh, I got a new number." And then she's like, "I need you all to like come and see me. This is an emergency." And so all the kids go, they meet Ma like just off the middle of some of this like path. And Ma lies to them and tells them, "I'm sick. I've gotten pancreatic cancer. And so, I've been taking medicine for it, yada, yada. And you all should come see me on Saturday." And as she's talking, Haley notices the bracelet that Ma's wearing, and it's actually Stephanie's bracelet.
Yeah, that comes back around, and so Haley pulls Maggie aside, and then they end up going and stalking Ma while Ma's at work, and they're just parked there. And more is revealed that, oh, Maggie's missing her earrings, Haley's missing a ring. They spotted this bracelet on her. They have to go and find out what's going on. So Haley drives to Ma's house, and they go and break in. They go upstairs, and they see this kind of cage all around, kind of blocking the upstairs, which I thought was pretty useless, because there's just like a simple like household outside gate lock where you just kind of push it up and slide it over, and the door is open. So yeah, they go upstairs, and immediately the setting, or the tone, gets darker. You see kind of this figure walking behind them outside the cage, and it gets a little bit creepier, a little bit scarier, and I guess more of that horror feeling that's been missing, throughout this movie. We're already maybe halfway through the movie. I guess that's one thing that I had, is we get like most of the movie, and there's not really more of that horror part of it.
Right. Yeah. I guess we'll get into that later. But I feel like it didn't bother me too much, because I just felt that even though it wasn't necessarily scary, the creepiness of Ma kind of filled in for the, I guess, actual horror aspect that was missing.
Okay, yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, I guess looking at it from that point of view, if you really focus on her, that could give me some sort of, I guess, satisfaction, but it was just missing. I mean, you get half of the movie, and there's nothing really going on except for everything that we've discussed, and it's just kind of piecing all these little things together. But yeah, so they break in, they're going around, you get that figure behind them. And then they go into Ma's room, and this is where Haley sees all their pictures. They're on a vanity up against the mirror, and then Maggie sees all these yearbook photos, old yearbook photos from Ma's high school, and she pieces together that her mom, Erica, Ben, Mercedes, and now Ma had all gone to high school together. And Haley starts peeling off the pictures from the mirror, and she turns them and flips them around, and she sees the parents on the back of them, kind of like piecing, oh, this parent belongs to this child. And they start getting suspicious. And then we get the next part, where is with the daughter, right?
Yeah, the pink figure that you mentioned earlier that was kind of in the background comes in the room, and she has this like weird, like kind of like African tribal mask or something on, and she takes it off, and they're like, Genie? And she's like, what are you guys doing here? Like, she's like very clueless, like wondering what they're doing. And so they kind of are like, Haley doesn't know who it is. Maggie kind of refreshes her, like, this is who this is. And they say, like, this is your house? And she's like, yeah, I live here. And that's when we kind of understand that, okay, Sue Ellen, or Ma, is Jeannie's mother. And she says, like, you can walk, because she's not in her wheelchair like she was in the very, very beginning of the film. She's like, oh, I can walk, but I'm sick, so my mom doesn't want me to walk. Like, she tells me not to walk. And they were like kind of saying stuff, and then I guess Jeannie hears Mom outside, and so she says, like, you guys need to get out of here. And she's like, I won't say a word. And they're like, okay, like, good. So they're trying to leave, but everything's all locked up. They can't get out of the house. And Ma comes in, so they just kind of like hide behind the couch. And then Ma, being as very meticulous as she is, she looks over where she has some ceramic cats that are sitting on like a coffee type table, and they were slightly moved. It wasn't even that they were pushed like crazy. They were slightly moved by like an inch or two, and she notices it and immediately is like, Jeannie, did you move my cats? And we can see as she's doing that, Jeannie says, like, no. The girls run like towards the back, like kitchen counter area.
Yeah, and while this is going on, you kind of get that dual scene going on, and it cuts to, before Ma gets to her house, we see her at work, and we get Ben coming in. He's dropping off his pet with Sue Ann. He kind of recognizes her, and he's like, oh, Sue Ann from high school, how's it been? We should catch up. And he invites her to get drinks later on that day. And then that's when we get Ma going back to her house, and then the girls hide behind the couch, and they have to sneak out, so they go through the basement while Ma goes upstairs. And then they eventually leave pretty safely. And then Ma confronts Jeannie, her daughter, and Jeannie's like, well, I just want to go to school. I don't see why. I feel okay. And you just start kind of feeling bad for Jeannie. Like, why isn't she able to go to school? If she feels okay, she can walk. She doesn't need a wheelchair. And then Ma's kind of being that dominant force, like, oh, you can't. People are going to make fun of you. Your hair is getting long. We got to shave that. So I don't know if I want to say that maybe Jeannie had cancer. Is that correct? Did they confirm that throughout the movie?
They never confirmed it. And it's a little, because it's a little odd. And this is where I'll say one of the things that, because I thoroughly enjoyed this movie a lot. The only thing I didn't like is that you don't get some answers that I feel should have been answered, because Ma tells those kids, I have pancreatic cancer, and then we see Jeannie, who's supposed to be sick. You can kind of guess, well, does Jeannie have pancreatic cancer? But then we get where Mom mentions to Jeannie, and I think she says, like, the doctors don't know, I know my baby, or like, I know. And she injects this stuff into Jeannie, and the stuff that she injects into Jeannie it seems as if it's some stuff that she gets from her vet, or at least that's what I thought. Because there, I don't remember if it was right after this or earlier or at some point, but she is seen like replacing, like putting back this injection type stuff back into when she goes back to work at the vet. And so this was a really important scene because it felt like, and I know that there's been stories in the past, so I do want to touch on it, is there have been news stories in the past where you have parents who kind of manipulate their kids and tell them that they're sick, or they tell them that something's wrong with them in like a health kind of way, and in reality it's the parent themselves that is making the child sick. And I kind of, the way that I took this is that Ma was making Jeannie sick and kind of spreading these lies in her head that she can't really walk or she shouldn't walk. You know, she's sick. She's not like everybody else because she didn't want Jeannie to go to school and try and act normal and be a normal kid and then have the same thing that happened to her when she was in high school, being picked on and bullied, happen to Jeannie. And so she was trying to keep her more sheltered at home because that conversation that is had between Jeannie, Haley, and Maggie, they ask her, we haven't seen you in school in forever. Like, where have you been? And she said, that's when she said, like, oh, Ma says it's best for me to stay here.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I definitely agree with you there that that's probably what's going on. I mean, Ma is probably scarred by her high school experience. She doesn't want her daughter to go through the same. But speaking of Ma's high school experience, while she's talking with Ben at the vet, we get one of those flashbacks of young Sue-Ann, and she gets a note while she's in science class, and this note says to meet Ben in the janitor's closet. And then it cuts back to Jeannie and the girls talking, and then when Ma gets home, after she's done talking to her daughter about why she can't go to school, and you know, saying that she's sick, and she injects her with that needle. It cuts back to another cutscene of young Anne, Sue-Ann, and she's talking with Mercedes, and I believe this is the first time that Mercedes' name is dropped in this young high school or old high school version. And Mercedes is telling Sue-Ann that, oh, you gotta give him oral in the janitor's closet. That's what's gonna happen. You're gonna give him oral. And she's kind of telling her what to do, and Sue-Ann is nervous. She doesn't really feel comfortable with it, but she really likes Ben, so she's like, I guess I'll go through with it. She puts on makeup and so forth, and then from there to in present time, Ben meets Sue-Ann at their pub, like they had arranged to meet before, and everything's just kind of going well. Everything's friendly at first. Ben's asking Sue-Ann how she's doing. Sue-Ann's kind of sympathizing when Ben brings up his wife dying, and then it kind of just takes a big turn there, and Ben pulls out this tracking device, and he's like, you know what this is? And she's like, is that a taser? You gonna tase me? He's like, no, it's a tracking device that I have in all my company cars, including my son's. And immediately she's like, oh, and oh, sorry, and then and then he's like, well, I have this in all the cars, and he's like, I want to know why my son's been going to your house so much. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're being crazy. And he just kind of gets more angrier, and he's like, the next time my son shows up at your house, I'm gonna get involved. I'm not gonna get the cops involved. I'm gonna go straight to you. And he starts bringing up the old past. He's like, if this has anything to do with me, I know I didn't really treat you well in the past, but if you're trying to get revenge, you gotta leave my son out of it. You've always been a loser. You always will be a loser. You know, kind of saying these hurtful things to her, and she's just kind of taking it in, and you know, getting angrier and about that whole situation. All these, you know, what happened to her when she was young, and now she has to deal with Ben in this adult form, and you know, she's messing around with his son, and things just start getting complicated.
Yeah, and I think at this point, this is really where the movie picks up. Ma kind of realizes that, oh, like, I'm caught, basically. So whatever I had planned or whatever I wanted to do, I got to get it done now. Um, After that scene, we get Maggie hanging out with Andy in the van, and Maggie's telling Andy everything they saw from the pictures to Jeannie, and Andy's just kind of like, oh, like it's nothing. Like he's trying to play it off just because it, he probably doesn't want to believe it, and obviously that's their hangout spot, so he just doesn't think much of it. Um, and Maggie ends up getting dropped off at home, and Ma is there, and she hears Ma's voice, and she's peeped around the corner, and she tries to sneak upstairs, and her mom Erica spots her and is like, "Oh, Maggie, like come in here, come in the room." And Ma's there, and she's like, "Oh, this is our, Louis veterinarian. Her name's Sue Ann, like all this stuff." And they're trying to play it off that they don't know each other. She's saying like, "Oh, nice to meet you," and like, "Oh," Sue Ann's asking like, "Oh, where do you go to high school?" Like all this stuff, and so the mom has no idea that they know each other already. And there's at one point where the mom says like, "Oh, like yeah, we used to go to high school together, like we're just catching up." And so the mom doesn't think anything of it, like she doesn't think of whatever issues Sue Ann has with high school. She's just thinking everything's like happy-go-lucky when it's really not.
Yeah, it's definitely I guess a different scene when it comes to Ma. She's pretending that she doesn't know this child, and now she's there paying a little visit, as she says, word for word. But then she leaves. She gives Maggie an evil eye while she's leaving, and then it gets back to the old young Sue Ann, and she's kind of finishing up in her closet. She's like, "Is that reassuring that she's gonna be with Ben?" She's like, "Are you gonna talk to me tomorrow?" And then he's like, "Well, let's just go outside." And immediately we see this shot of a bunch of kids standing outside waiting for them, and you see the young version of Ben, and she's like, "Wait, Ben?" And she turns around, and then there's this other guy, and they're all laughing at her, making fun of her, and she ended up giving oral to some guy she didn't really consent to, and she was fooled and made fun of, and she runs out. And this is where that young story, her high school experience, wraps up, and we get the full thing about what really happened to her, and you start to sympathize with her about being picked on so harshly as a young girl, and having to do that in a janitor's closet, thinking that it was the love of her life, and it wasn't that case.
Yeah, it was a really harsh scene. And now we understand why Ma is doing everything that she's currently doing, and why she's seeking this revenge, and why she doesn't like the popular kids. And this now we could kind of reflect back on a lot of things, is that she, in the beginning of the movie, when she pulls the gun out, like she on Chaz, and she tells him to strip down to embarrass him. Though now we kind of realize, okay, she doesn't like these popular kids. Chaz is, obviously this like popular kid, and she's basically wanted to embarrass him in front of his friends and scare him up, because she's thinking of it as back how, like when she was in high school, what the popular kids did to her. And this next scene that we get is the first death. Now, when Ma finishes her flashback, she gets in her truck, and she has like this like crazy angry face on her, and she's driving home, and she's driving past where she sees Mercedes running, and you kind of get this wide shot of Mercedes on the left and Ma on the right, and out of nowhere, Ma just immediately swerves over to the left and just crunches her, as I like to say. She completely crunched her, and as she's driving away, she calls her the C word, and then the camera just zooms in on Mercedes, like all bloodied up and like dead in the middle of the street.
Yeah, it was definitely a surprising kill for me. It just kind of happened, and Ma just keeps driving off. You see Mercedes dead on the floor, and then Ma's driving off. And then it cuts to the next scene. Like it just happened so quickly as a first death. But I mean, everybody wanted Mercedes dead. That was pretty obvious. Um, especially, getting the full story of what happened to them when they were in high school as well. But anyways, the next scene after that is Maggie at home. She hears her dog crying outside. She runs outside. She sees that it's bleeding, and then she kind of suspects like someone did this, so she starts waving her flashlight around, and you kind of see Ma's figure deep in the distance, and Maggie can kind of get the sense of who it is, but she can't see who it is. And then they go inside. I'm sorry about that. It cuts to Ma at the vet, and she's walking in the back where all the kennels are, and you see all these dogs, and then it kind of pans over to this final cage, and this is where you see Ma's boss at the vet inside a cage, all bloodied up. She's dead, and that's the second killing within 2 minutes or so. And it happens so instantly. Ma's going crazy. She's had enough. This is where it's all popping off.
Yeah, Ma was now, like we kind of mentioned, once Ben had that tracking device and started figuring out like what is Ma up to, that's when everything went completely downhill, and Ma understood, like I said, if I'm gonna do this, I gotta get this done now. So it was just kill after kill after kill. The next scene after that, because it goes to there with the kennel, and again the Maggie's there with the dog inside, and when she's there with the dog inside, she says like, because the mom wants to call the vet, and so she's like, I'm gonna call Sue-Ann, and Maggie's like, no, you can't call Sue-Ann. She's like, what? Why? And then I was like, is she gonna tell her? And Sue-Ann said, or Maggie says, I know who Sue-Ann is. Like, I've been to her home. And then the scene ends up cutting one more time.
Yeah, it goes to Sue-Ann at her home. You get the doorbell ringing, and she opens it, and it's Ben there, and he's angry. He believes that his son is there. He's like, I know he's here. Where is he? And Sue-Ann pulls out the tracker that he had pulled out earlier, and she's like, do you know what this is? And she kind of gets back of him, and immediately she puts a needle in his neck, and she kind of tranquilizes him, and he falls down. And then it cuts back to Maggie and her mom, and they're discussing the seriousness of how Maggie was careless with this mall person that she doesn't even know. She's hanging out at her house. She's being given drugs and alcohol. She's partying. She's not taking care of herself. And the mom has had enough. She's angry. She's fed up, and she grounds Maggie, sends her to her room, and that's pretty much it. She puts her foot down, and Maggie's ended up being grounded.
Yeah, so she's grounded now. She's not supposed to leave the house. She's not supposed to do anything. And the scene cuts back to Sue-Ann, Ma's house, and we see Ben, and he's finally like waking up, but he's completely strapped to the bed. And he's like looking around, and the camera zooms in on a bag of blood, which has Louie on the name, which is Maggie's dog. So now story starting to come together. Maggie drained Louie of a buttload of blood, and they're having like a little discussion, and she basically tells him like, you've always been a dog, and you deserve to be what you are, or whatever. And she puts the needle in Ben and starts pumping that dog blood into Ben. And then on the other wrist, she takes a knife, slits his wrist, and then injects him with, I guess, like another tranquilizing dart, so he's not screaming and acting all crazy. And so that's, of course, we all know what's going to happen. That's going to be the ultimate demise of Ben. I thought this was a really interesting kill, especially with the dog blood.
Yeah, Ben's death was definitely pretty interesting, I thought, as well. It's something different. I think her putting the dog's blood in one IV on one arm, and then having him cut open on the other arm, really just kind of gets him to suffer more, to bleed out more. But and then again, she tranquilized him, so he really didn't feel much. He just kind of bled out with this dog blood as well. So yeah, I really don't understand the full effect of that, but it's something I would definitely want to look up, see if that's actually a real way, people kill each other, or, people just kill in general. People don't kill each other every day. So yeah, that's I thought that was pretty interesting as well. But from there, after we get this killing, we get Erica, which is Maggie's mom. She confronts Sue-Ann at the liquor store, and Sue-Ann is buying all the liquor for her parties and so forth. And Erica storms in. She's really mad. She's like, "These are kids. You shouldn't be messing around with them." And Ma is coming back. She's like, she's seeing it as her being popular. She's seeing it as Erica being jealous, which is something different. She hasn't been that way throughout her life, especially in high school, and she now sees this as it coming around, her being the popular one, about Erica wanting to be in the little group that she is in.
Yeah, Ma ends up mentioning, she says like, "How does it feel to be on the outside looking in, huh?" And all this other kind of stuff. And Ma storms out, and Erica, Maggie's mom, is like confused. She ends up leaving, and it cuts to Maggie, and she gets a video message from Ma, and it's nighttime, and Ma is flaunting that Andy is there at her basement, and she tells her thanks for the earrings, and she shows off Maggie's earrings. And it's like this whole new side of Ma that Maggie hasn't seen, where Maggie's not really trying to hide anything anymore. She's just being out in the open with the kids. And then it's also interesting because Andy went to Ma's even after Maggie said, like, "I don't want you going there." So that's a bit of a conflict as well.
Yeah, Maggie's pretty upset about that. I mean, it started off with the Andy thing, but then now she sees that Ma has her earrings on, so she gets even angrier, and she goes and she steals the keys from her mom. She takes the car and she drives straight over to Ma's, and she goes down into the basement. And at this point, all the extra kids are leaving. She meets up with Andy, and she's like, wait, let's go. Where's everybody going? She's like, "No, stay. Ma wants just the original crew to be here. We're all gonna continue partying." And all the kids are drunk. Like, Haley comes up to Maggie and automatically just kisses her. She's like, "I'm glad you're here." And these kids are drunk. They're barely keeping themselves on their own 2 feet. They're about to pass out, it looks like. And it cuts to Ma upstairs. She gives her daughter these pills, and I would assume they're sleeping pills, just to kind of get her daughter out of the way. Her daughter's just gonna sleep upstairs, and I don't have to worry about her. And she kind of checks. She does that tongue thing where she makes the genie go up and down, making sure that she swallowed the pills. But you kind of get that sense that she didn't really swallow the pills. Like something's gonna happen later. And then it comes down, Ma goes outside to the basement doors, and she blocks the doors with a pipe. And then Maggie starts freaking out in the basement.
Yeah, she starts freaking out really, really bad, because she understands, like, okay, this isn't good. Like, something's about to go down. All the kids start passing out, and Maggie's the only one who's awake. Maggie then goes up the stairs, where she walks into Ma's room to find Ben dead, like just out, chained up to the bed frame. And I thought it was a good, like, attention to detail. You could still see like the IV and stuff in him. His right wrist that was slit is where like all the blood was. It was all dried up, so you could tell he had been there for a little while. And as soon as Maggie kind of does the like movie you see Ma in the back, and she injects her with one of those needles that's like the tranquilizer type of stuff.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good attention to detail as well. It was very well set up. And progress pretty evenly. And then after that scene, we see Erica, the mom. She wakes up in her own home. She's kind of going through her morning routine, and she calls out to Maggie, but with no answer. And then it cuts back to the kids in the basement, and you see all of them are chained up by the neck. They have this kind of like collar, and then the rope goes from the back of their neck, and it just kind of flows in. Some of them are chained up to the wall. Some of them are chained up to different areas of the basement, and everyone except for Maggie is asleep. They're passed out. They're out cold. They've been drugged. And then we see Ma. She goes to Chaz, who's lying. She lies him down on the floor. She grabs this iron that you use to iron your clothes, and it's piping hot. She cuts his shirt open, and she places it right there, right on his abdomen, and oh man, it leaves like the nastiest burn. Like if you see it in the movie, it's just burned up. Like it's just flesh now, and it's all bloody. It's very, very open. And it rubbed me the wrong way, because I can't imagine how that must feel. I mean, he was tranquilized and passed out, but imagine feeling that on your abdomen, especially when you wake up.
Oh, and that would hurt a lot. And Ma like notices that Maggie is awake at that point, and one of the things she mentions is, she says like, "Oh, you're a tough one. I gave you enough stuff to knock out a Great Dane." And obviously she went after Chaz, because again, he was the one that was supposed to be the perfect guy out of the group, the real popular one, and she takes offense to that. It brings her back to her high school time, so that's why she wanted to brand him. And as she is ironing his chest, she even says like, "Oh, his perfect little skin," and all this stuff. She's just being so weird and so creepy. Octavia did such a great job at this part especially. And after Chaz, she's going down a list. She says, "And the next one is Haley," and she mentioned something like, being the popular girl and all this stuff. And she says, "Oh, I need a man, huh? Well, this ought to keep your mouth shut." And she literally sews her mouth shut. And it was like, it's such a weird thing, because I'm not afraid of needles, but seeing them go through the lip like that, and her just weaving in and out, that was worse than the ironing thing to me.
You think so? I think the ironing thing touched me a little bit more, but I mean, getting your lips sewn shut is pretty traumatic as well. I mean, like, the way the scene is shot, you see the thread going through. You see her putting the needle back in through the other side of the lip. It's very graphic. It's really good scene. I think these little, and they're not killings, but these little torture methods that Ma does in this part really surprised me. I really liked them. And then she goes from Haley, and she goes to Darrell next, which I thought this is interesting. I want to see your take on it. She grabs the paint, a paint bucket, and she's like, "It can only be one of us. They'll only allow one of us." And when she's referring to that, she's referring to the color of their skin, because they were both black. Everybody else in the room wasn't. And she's like, "Well, there can only be one of us. They can only allow one of us." So she paints his face completely white. And at this point, this is where Andy wakes up.
Yeah, and the reason why I feel like she said the whole "there can only be one of us" is because in all of her flashbacks, she was the only black kid at the school. At least from what I can recall, when you saw the kids, I didn't see any other black kids. They were all like white, uppity, kind of preppy kids. And the other thing as well is, which we'll get into in like a few seconds here, and I'll reference back to it, but she goes to Andy, and because Andy wakes up and he's like, "Ma," and Andy sees Maggie chained up, and Ma goes over to Andy, and he's like, "Ma, is everything okay?" Like, he's talking very like sweet and like all this other kind of stuff, and it's super interesting. And he, I guess, doesn't have the strength to really do much, so he kind of falls into Ma's arms, and they're hugging, and they kind of do this little like dance thing, and then he ends up saying like, "Ma, I love you. And Ma goes from this kind of dazed stare to they lean in and they kiss each other. And Maggie's there and it's just torturing her because they're right in front. And even the camera work in this movie is awesome. They have it where you're basically in the point of view, like it cuts to Maggie's facial expression, and then you're in her point of view looking at them just making out. And it's so weird because like obviously she's making out with the kid, but at the same time we realize that he wasn't doing this because he actually loves Ma. He was trying to, I guess, get on her good side to ultimately try and save Maggie, because Ma then stabs, she has this butcher knife and she stabs Andy in the chest or in the stomach and says, what is it? He says like, "You're lying." Yeah, she says like, "You're lying." And he just like falls on the ground and Maggie's like screaming and going all crazy and stuff. And that's when the doorbell rings actually.
Yeah, the doorbell rings and Ma threatens Maggie, like, "Don't make a noise, I'll cut your throat right here." She goes upstairs, she opens the door, and it's the police officer, the same one that confronted all the kids when they were at that rock place, drinking and so forth. But yeah, he comes back and he starts questioning her, like, there's a bunch of cars out there, there's a bunch of empty drinks and a bunch of trash all over your yard. Who do you have here? What's going on? And then when she starts to try to play it off, Maggie makes a noise downstairs, and that's when he gets really suspicious. He's like, "I gotta go check it out. What do you have going on? What are you hiding?" And right as he's about to step inside, Jeannie comes in her wheelchair and she's like, "I'm sorry, that was me." And then Ma starts playing off of that. She's like, "Yeah, it's just my daughter, me and my daughter here. There's nothing for you to worry about. You're actually preventing us from going to a doctor's appointment. So if you don't mind, if we could wrap this up." And then Maggie's able to muster out a scream. While the cop is walking away, and he turns around and Ma has the gun and she shoots him a couple times in the chest and he's dead. And Ma blames it immediately on Jeannie, for I have no reason. She just kind of blames it on her, and "You did this, so you gotta help me." She pulls Jeannie out of the wheelchair and they start dragging the policeman's body into the house, and Ma goes downstairs.
Yeah, and when they go back downstairs, she tells Maggie, "I thought I told you not to scream. Now you're gonna help me set everything up." And she pulls Maggie still has the thing around her neck and the rope's still there, and she drags her over to this table where Ma has perfectly kind of crafted out this seating arrangement that they all need to take this picture, and she has pictures of the kids' heads and her sitting down. It's really, really just weird and methodical, and they're all sitting there. And this goes back to the kid with the black face, because also in the original photo that she's trying to replicate, or this photo that she wants done, Ma is the only black person in the photo as well, so there can't be two black people in the thing.
Oh, that's definitely something I overlooked. I knew she showed Maggie kind of that photo, but I didn't notice I guess the order that they were in. So that definitely makes sense when she said there can only be one of us, because she can be the only one. She has to set everything else exactly how it looks in those pictures. So yeah, that's a good point out right there. I didn't see that before.
Yeah, and it just goes to show how, like, well, obviously at this point we know Ma's crazy, but just how attention to detail she is, and how crazy in the head she is, that she's trying to like replicate these things and do these things in this specific order, and it's just so wild. And that's what they do. They put all the kids and they're on the couch and they're in this crazy order, and she has this old school camera too, which shows it's referencing the old times. It's one of those really old film cameras, and Maggie takes two pictures, and after those two pictures, Ma then she takes the rope that Maggie's attached to and pulls up on it and wraps it around this pole to try and hang Maggie. And that's when we hear Jeannie scream out and say, "Ma, he's still moving. He's still moving. Mom, he's still moving," referencing the cop. But when Ma starts walking up the stairs and opens the door, Jeannie's there with the frying pan and just whacks Ma, and she falls down the stairs. So we're but then Jeannie, who's obviously like, she's out of the wheelchair now, she's scared, she probably doesn't know what to do. Instead of going down there to like see who's down there, she just closes the door and is like panting really, really hard. And also the other key thing, when she knocks and hits Ma, there's a candle that falls, so it starts a fire.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty interesting to see Jeannie kind of, take a stance against her mother. She doesn't even know what's going on downstairs. She's not allowed in the basement at all. But I think it's the fact that she saw her mother kill this policeman, and she had to take a stance, and she was too scared to figure out what was going on in the basement. She takes a moment to kind of compose herself, and she goes downstairs. She sees Maggie hanging from this pillar, unable to breathe, and she goes over and she helps Maggie get down, and all the kids start waking up, everybody around them, and then they start getting unhooked. And they try to escape, try to go through the window, but that's all boarded up because of Ma, and of course they can't go through the normal door. So they're banging, yelling for help, and you see it cuts to Ma lying there on the floor unconscious, and then you get that shot of her open her eyes, that sudden awakening, and she goes over and she grasps Jeannie, but at the same time, here comes Erica, the mom, who had been looking for Maggie this whole time, and it's almost like she knew, like, oh, my daughter's gonna be with Sue-Ann, because Sue-Ann is completely crazy. So they open up the basement and they free all the kids, but Ma's holding Jeannie there hostage, and Maggie's freaking out because she doesn't want Jeannie to get injured. She really cares about her safety. And while this is going on, Ma's telling Jeannie, like, oh, she's just like her mother. She doesn't want to help you. She doesn't want any good for you. She's just a horrible person. And at the same time, Erica is yelling back at her, like, I'm so sorry. I should have helped you. I should have done something to prevent what had happened to you in high school. And this is where we start getting that closure of that. And eventually Maggie breaks away, and while Ma's back is turned, she stabs her with a knife and says, I'm nothing like my mother. What else does she say? She's like, I'm not a coward, I believe, right?
Yeah, she says, like, I'm not a coward. I think she says, like, I think she just says, I'm not a coward, and that's it. And as soon as Ma's stabbed, that's when Jeannie runs into Maggie's mom, Erica's arms, and they all basically, as like they're fleeing out of the little basement, like a fire explodes, and you could tell it's gonna get worse, and everyone runs out, and it cuts back to Ma, who is now, like, she's up and moving, and this is my problem, because she got stabbed, and I feel like she was walking like normal, opposed to like when Andy got stabbed, and even he, like, when he woke up and like the parents came to save him, when they come out, he like falls on the ground, and he's like still clearly hurt because he got stabbed in the stomach. But with Ma, it seemed like she was just walking back out of the basement like normal, like, I wasn't stabbed. So that was my one thing I didn't like. But she ends up walking back upstairs to go see Ben, who is, of course, still chained to the bed. And she like caresses his face, and then like gives him a kiss on the cheek, and lays next to him while the house burns. And that's how the movie ends.
Yeah, I do like this ending a lot. She kind of just accepts her fate, and she had killed the love of her life, and now she's gonna die with him. And then the final shot is kind of this pan where we see the full house on fire, and you see the firefighters coming in with their fire truck, and then it kind of just does this overhead shot directly over the house, and you see the flames coming out of the windows and everything, and it's such an amazing shot for me. It's a good ending, and then it just kind of cuts, and that's the end of the movie.
Yes, and before we get into our ratings, I did want to just, I guess, have a little bit of a discussion. I know you had mentioned earlier when initially Ma tells Maggie like men are all pigs, like they only want one thing, like don't wind up with the baby. I feel like Ma told her that, and then when she says like, "Oh, you sound like my mother" or whatever, and Ma took exception to it. This is like a stretch, but I think it refers to when we remember Maggie asked her about the ring on her finger, and she says like, "Oh, like I had a husband, we split up and stuff." We get Jeannie, who the mom is like possibly feeding these drugs and like all this stuff, like slowly killing her. This is one thing we didn't touch on. If you go back and watch the movie as well, I'm kind of all over the place right now. I have so many thoughts in my head. There's when the Ma grabs Jeannie and they're trying to walk out of the burning or she's trying to like lead her up the stairs to get out of the burning building. She tells Jeannie something along the lines of like, "It'll all be over now," or like it's time to go, or something like that. And I don't think she's referencing like, "Hey, it's time to get out of here." I think what was happening is Ma was basically wanting to like kill herself and Jeannie together, because as I'm looking back and really thinking about this film, I don't think that Ma wanted a daughter the whole time. And I think that's why, as probably her daughter's grown up, she's continued to feed her drugs and do all this stuff and put in her head, like, the doctors don't know anything. You're sick. Like, you don't need to go to school. You just need to stay here. And she's basically, I feel like in a way, with her feeding her these drugs and doing these things, she was slowly killing her daughter, Jeannie. And I think that may be because she had that bad experience with Ben. Shortly after high school, she had to have had Jeannie, the daughter, and the husband's no longer there. So in my mind, I know it's like the assuming type of thing, but I'm assuming that the husband left Ma to basically care for Jeannie at like at some point at like a younger age. And so that's why she told Maggie, like, "Men only want one thing, you don't want no baby." So am I crazy, or do you think it could potentially all tie together?
No, I definitely had those thoughts in the back of my head as well, but I mean, it's all just assumptions at this point. We don't really know what had happened to the husband. And I know there's one line, I don't remember what exactly Ma says, but when they're talking about the husband, she says something suspicious about like him disappearing. I wish I had that quote, but
she might have killed
like,
him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many different scenarios as to what could have happened, why she has this daughter, why she has her caged up in upstairs, why she doesn't let her go to school. There's so many different scenarios, and it is a possibility that she could have been trying to kill her daughter this whole time and just kind of getting rid of her existence and focusing on herself being happy, you know, with these high school kids and so forth. But it's definitely an interesting movie. There's a lot open for interpretation. But as far as the main story goes, I do like the fact that they brought in that backstory. It's definitely something interesting, something that could happen in the real world, and something that could traumatize someone like this to the point to where they want revenge, where they want, you know, to get back for what had happened to them.
Yep. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about this movie a lot, is that fact of it. The horror element of it was kind of not necessarily, hey, there's like, this movie's scary, there's some demon, there's some creature. The horror element of it is this person that at one point was a normal person, normal member of society, but due to the things that occurred in their life, caused them to become this very like unhinged, deranged human being, and causing horror upon other people's lives.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely agree. It's very psychological as far as the horror part of it. But I mean, I guess I'll ask you then. What are you gonna give this, sir? How many pints of blood?
I'm giving it 8.5.
8.5. Why is that?
My reason for giving it 8.5 is because I think that the kind of going back to what we had mentioned earlier is I just feel like this movie does a lot when it comes to the it being so real could happen in real life. Like I like movies that I feel like this could potentially happen in real life. It's very realistic. It's not over exaggerated. It's not like I mentioned, there's not this serial killer, there's not this demon, there's not this, kind of mythical creature that's causing this harm. It's just a regular person that had some, effed up things happen to them, and now they're having to do essentially what they didn't have to, but it led to them doing essentially what they're doing. I think the camera work involved was really, really well. I like the fact that they really focused on the backstory. That plays an important role. I like the way that there's a lot of small details that you really have to pay attention to, because if you don't pay attention to some of those small things, you'll miss a lot of important details as well with it. So I mean, overall, I just think this was a movie that I can watch many, many times, and I feel like I'll constantly pick up on other things that I miss.
Okay, I definitely could see that as from your point of view. It's not exactly how I feel, but I can definitely see that.
So how many pints of blood do you give it then, since we're gonna have a difference in opinion?
I am going to give this a 5.5 out of 10.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's about average for me. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the first hour of the movie just really drags on. And I watched this in multiple times, like in one sitting. So it was a lot to process, but I mean, just that beginning part, all this backstory it felt necessary for the movie, but it just didn't grasp my attention as much as I thought it would. I mean, the whole idea of it, this young girl having to go through what she went through in high school, and now she's going insane because of it. I like that, but I mean, I don't feel like they supported that whole premise. I feel like there could have been more at it. I feel like there's a lot of filler. The little details, like the little scenes that are maybe 30 seconds long, I mean, some of them didn't really feel necessary, and it just felt added to make this an hour and 30. And as far as the killings go, I think they were very original. I do like them. And it's just the horror part for me, especially. It didn't do it for me. Like, it was just average to me. It felt like there could have been a lot more. It had its moments, and I do praise Octavia Spencer especially for excelling in this role, because she really did. It was very good acting. But everybody else just was kind of okay for me. Nothing really grasped my attention outside of that.
Okay, fair enough. I definitely disagree a whole lot. I know we discussed a little bit before the podcast, and I don't know, for me, it just hit all the kind of points that I want out of this type of film. Going into it, I knew it wasn't going to be like your traditional horror film. I knew it was going to have that more psychological kind of element, and even lean a little bit more towards thriller possibly instead of horror. And because of that, it didn't bother me at all. I will admit that, because this is like a double-edged sword, I enjoyed the fact that we got like an hour of basically leading up to and backstory, and then 30 minutes of like boom, 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 we're done. But at the same time, I can see where for other people, they may not like that, and they would want it to be like, hey, you get like 30 minutes of leading up, and then we got boom, 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 and then maybe a little bit more, and then boom, boom, boom. So I could see how maybe for some people they felt it just dragged until you got to like the nitty gritty.
Yeah, definitely. And I tried to go into this with like no expectations. When I watch movies for this cast, it's not me like focusing solely on the horror part. Like, I think it's a pretty decent movie altogether. but it just didn't feel, like it didn't live up to any expectation. In other words, it was just kind of an okay movie. I probably will watch it again eventually, but at the same time, I'm not excited to do so.
I got you. Well, I'm letting our viewers know if y'all trying to Netflix party watch this movie. Well, it ain't even on Netflix, but I may or may not have it on a hard drive. You trying to watch it? I'm here. I'll watch it with you, Jose. He could give us some popcorn or something. He don't gotta watch it.
Hey, I'll sit down and give my commentary throughout. It's not gonna be great. But...
All right, man. Well, do you got any? What type of fun facts you got about the movie?
Yeah. So for this one here, I mentioned earlier Tate Taylor directed Octavia Spencer when she won the Oscar for her performance in The Help. And then I know I wanted to touch more on their relationship. So this whole movie actually came together because of Tate Taylor's desire to direct a film, quote unquote, about something effed up. And he was having a conversation with the production company, and he wanted a new script. He wanted something fresh. He wanted to take it in a different direction, and he read the original script, which had kind of no backstory for Ma, and it was just kind of plain she was doing all this stuff just because she was doing all this stuff. There was no backstory as to why she was killing, why she was getting so angry, and immediately he knew Octavia Spencer he wanted her to be in this lead role, and he kind of changed everything and flipped it, and he gave the backstory, and it really brought this whole movie together, because without that we wouldn't have this story. I know he said word for word here about having no backstory, that it would have made that character a complete monster that no audience member could sympathize with. So he really wanted us to sympathize and to get that high school experience that she had, and for us to feel bad, and for it to give a reason why she was going through all that she was going through.
Oh wow. Okay, nice. I didn't know that about the switching there to make it for Octavia.
Yeah, he completely rewrote because he bought the script. What the production company bought the script from that Scotty Lands, and then Tate, came upon it. And I believe I read somewhere that the studio bought it, and then the next day they brought in Tate Taylor, and that's when they officially got the green light and they started working on the movie.
Interesting. Okay, and that makes sense from earlier when I had mentioned that they were, friends and that they had worked together and stuff in the past. I could see easily him looking at the script just saying like, Octavia's perfect for this, and then just like changing everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's gotta be great to have a friend like that who just completely writes everything for you. But yeah, I mean, she does great in this altogether. I think she's a great actress. So that's really all the fun facts that I had. There wasn't too much for this movie.
All right. Well, with that, we do, of course, want to thank everyone for listening. As always, you can find us on our socials, on Instagram at Gruesome Task Podcast, on Twitter at The Gruesome Task, myself on Twitter at _under_the_knife, and on Instagram at Deonte MS.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at that guy Jose, and then you can find me on Instagram at j.a.gallegos. Look forward to any interactions, and I'm going to sign off for this week. Catch you guys in next week's episode. Really excited for it. Y'all have a good one.
Yes, y'all have a great one. How many pints of blood are you drinking?
Life sucks, and then you die.